Hi, it's Anthony and Sucker with Land Title. We wanted to bring you our Boulder County market update. This is the month of November, and yes, this is our first live stream together. We're going live on YouTube now. This just makes it a little bit easier so that we can send it out afterwards and you can view it forever in case we say something worth repeating.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too, right? Well, Boulder County has been an interesting place this year, but it's actually a little bit different than the Denver markets. It's been really resilient, and none of this data would show you that. So we're going to talk a little bit about it and learn how to digest it. One big thing here is you can see over the last 4 years, because I really dislike showing just the last year or two because they were really anomalies, right? I mean, you can see how low inventory was. You can see how high sales were. This year, we're going into these high interest rate environments. You can see rising inventory, rising tide there. And now things are in the fall. And I keep saying we're in a rising inventory environment and the inventory is falling off. And people are going, but Anthony, how can inventory fall off in the winter if it's a rising inventory environment? So how's that happen?
Well, that's a really good question. And the main piece is how many of these have also been removed? How many listings have we seen taken off the market and will be put back on come January, February, March? And that's what we're really kind of noticing here is it's normal to have this drop right in December of active inventory. People are taking things off the market during the holidays. Doesn't mean those homes aren't going to be on the market at some point. It just is a question of when. And so we're really seeing a lot of sellers and, talking to folks like you out in the market, we're hearing a lot of that. Hey, we're going to wait till, February, March. We're going to do some slight upgrades, maybe paint these goofy rooms that were wild colors for our kids. And then we can show this house and we'll get a little bit more attention. So people aren't having to move in and then paint, because that's really what we're seeing is the stuff moving is turnkey, ready to go, great photos, and it's moving ready. That's what we're seeing. That's what these buyers out there want right now, from what we can tell from stats and talking to the market. So it's important to remember that your buyers, think about what your buyers want. Well, that's what your listings need to have as well.
Yeah, I mean, literally had a client yesterday tell me, "Oh, we're riding out, or we're under contract. They want to move in before Christmas. It's like the 14th to the 24th, right? So they are going to make it happen. It's 10-day close cash, right? It can happen for sure. They're out of state, but it's just this is why we don't just take things off the market all the time. Like there are plenty of buyers going out there, and I think that's one of the big talking points for our sellers is like it may or may not be worth taking your house off the market, but don't forget people are still buying and selling real estate in December, right? We saw it last month in November. I mean, let's just get into some of the actives here. I mean, look at this. This is active units across the marketplace. Inventory is still staggeringly low, right? It's way lower than it was in 2020 still. We're still don't have nearly enough homes for all the buyers active in the marketplace. It just feels like you don't have enough to choose from right now. It felt better a month or two ago, and here we are again in this inventory constraint, which means we're going to start in January with a new year in a really low inventory environment, and we're probably going to start to see some of that pile up a little bit, but it's going to be slow ratchets all the way through,
Yep.
the middle of the year, like we would have seen in 2019, right? 2019 back here in 2019 was a really interesting environment because we may have had inventory over 1,000 units to start with, but it also crept up really quickly.
Yep.
Right. And there actually was a lot of sales in 2019.
And so what we can, so this is last year. We were so off on our, when buyers got active versus when listings went active. And that was one of the hardest parts is there was buyers, one out there wanting to buy a home with those mortgage rates being so low. The sellers just weren't on the market, and the sellers were late to the game. Then the buyer demand dropped off, and then the market kind of shifted into a lot more of an equilibrium. And that's what we've been seeing and hearing is it's still a great time for buyers. We're hoping to see, unlike 2019 where, it was a little bit of a slower start to the year, we're hoping we see a lot more listings come on earlier to kind of match that earlier buyer demand so we don't have that disconnect of when those curves are kind of going. Can't really see it in my hands in the photo.
I mean, I think the big thing is if you can coach your sellers to list early, February is the time to list a house, right? Way more buyers than active listings on the market. Sellers take a while to get going. And honestly, it's just not convenient to sell your house in February, right? Kids are still at school. There's all this stuff going on. But that's really where you can capitalize in the market the most. And buyers seem to have it's a new year. I made a new decision. I want to live in a new house. So they kind of make that turn and they actually come to market earlier. So let's take a look at it here. You can see here in the month supply of inventory, just kind of how this trends every single year. So we're only at 1.78 months of inventory, right? We peaked out around not even 2.5 months of inventory this year. And this is really low, right? 4 to 6 months would be considered a balanced market, right? Quote unquote. The only balanced market I can tell you that we've had since about 2013 was 2019 for about 4 months. So this area doesn't just get balanced, right? It's always very seller favorable, but the difference between what's happening now and before is homes aren't going off the market in 8 days. They might take 30 days. So we're kind of just readjusting our mindset from 2021 or even early 2022.
We're getting back to the norms.
To more normalized markets, right? And that's not such a bad thing because at least the buyers can find a house that they want and they're not feeling like I'm being shoved into a home because it's the only thing on the market and I'm going to pay $50,000 more than what they're asking for it, right? The other issue here, though, is with the sellers is sellers feel like they're going to take a little bit of a haircut because the market's slowing down. But we can think about it. We'll talk about appreciation later. Actually, let's just cover that in another slide.
Yeah, we'll cover the appreciation in another slide. But yeah,
what about cities, Tucker?
So this is something that's really interesting. Is once again the submarkets are still very different. We can see Louisville, Lafayette, absolutely doing fantastic. Some of the strongest markets in Boulder County. Erie's still doing really hot. Once again, Superior's dragging a little bit. Longmont's starting to creep up there as well, and that might just be an issue of the season and what you can buy with your dollars, because Longmont didn't see as much appreciation as the rest of Boulder County. So it's still relatively more
affordable, right?
Affordable.
And the other thing is, Longmont started down here, right? So Longmont being the cheapest place in the county had a long way to go to catch up to everywhere else. So even somewhere like Erie, I mean, price per square foot has been really reasonable. Last year was like the first time we really saw Erie and Longmont get closer in price per square foot. So that really shows us that market's come a long ways, but it just had so far to go to come up to.
And it's also because they have more inventory in Longmont.
Absolutely.
That's the flip side. Yeah.
Unlike everywhere else in this county, there's actually land in Longmont.
And there's a lot that Longmont's actually, some of the commercial work I've been paying attention to. There's a lot of activity in Longmont right now. There's going to be a lot of changes here in the next 4 to 5 years. So that's a really good sign if you have clients shop in that Longmont area and they're going to be in that area for a while. It's a great time to go up there because you're getting in before a lot of this new commercial work or a lot of these more apartment buildings get built. They're really going to be revamping that River District over by Boston Avenue. So a lot of that's going to be changing over here in the next probably about 5 years. It's going to take a little time. These development projects take forever, but so it's a good sign if you have people shopping in Longmont. But, we're looking at Boulder as well on our month supply of inventory. We're right in the norm of the market here for the county, but we're also a lot higher price points. So it's still showing that we are moving along pretty well on those higher price points. We haven't seen a total drop off. We're still seeing luxury move. We're still seeing things go into contract fairly quickly in the luxury market. If it's priced right area, move in ready.
Exactly. Let's look at that. Look at the speed of the market. So speed of the market is something that I think you really need to pay attention to. 2022 was the first year we saw like a traditional norm in a long time. Even 2019 wasn't really a good indicator of what this should look like. The fastest part of the market should be like that May, June timeframe where people are lots of sellers, lots of buyers. It's very fast, right? This year was like 9.5 days. It was one of the fastest markets in the country. In January or December, right, we should be way above where we are now. Honestly, I keep saying I think we're going to make it to 40, which we probably will in December. But 40, 50 days in the MLS means active to under contract in a month and a half. Like that's actually pretty good, right? I mean, This is a fall market. Like things don't move as quickly, but if you can sell a home in 34 days right now, I mean, it might still be worth getting your home on the market and selling it, especially now that we're kind of almost to the holidays. You put it up here in a couple weeks and let them go off to the races.
Yeah.
But this is a good sign, right? So the speed of the market here is way faster than it was pre-pandemic, right? I think some things that people learned through the pandemic and lenders adjusted and all these different people made these adjustments for us is, we could close on a loan in 10 days, right? That never happened pre-pandemic. So that sped up the process a little bit too. So if you wanted to, win on terms because you couldn't win on price, there was all these strategies for that. And a lot of that didn't really go away.
No,
right?
Not at all. And I think we're going to continue to see faster than historical kind of averages for days on market because of things like that. And also because of the internet, people, when they go to see a house, they've already looked at the pictures. They've already kind of put it through their head. They've already asked their, spouse what they think.
Yeah, they know layouts. They already know what they're looking for.
And that's a lot of it came from the pandemic of, now we're using Matterports and now we have, whole footprints of the home. And that's not just luxuries. That's, more of the meat and potatoes of the market, again, these additional tools and services. by these listing agents, which is a great sign because when people show up to go see the house, it's a little bit simpler decision. It's not, oh, we need to go view 50 houses and then figure it out. It's,
Exactly.
oh, we looked at it all online. These are the 6 we want to look at. So we're going to continue to see that days in MLS, stay elevated here probably for the next couple months. Then we'll really start seeing it drop once more inventory comes on, plus the buyers really pick up into full speed come late Q1, early Q2.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's look at it by price point. The one thing Tucker said is luxury is still doing remarkably well.
It's amazing.
And it's booming, right? I mean, this county has had so much more money come in since COVID than pre-COVID that now we have this amazing market. I mean, it seems like the lid popped off, right? We used to do $4 or $5 million homes, like one a month, maybe 2 a month. And here we are now where, I mean, there were 7 $3+ million homes that sold. We're exactly in line with where we were last year. Cost of money seems to make zero effect to the high-end luxury market. And people are moving here in droves in the high end. So that's a really good sign. If you move your head just a little bit.
Although I get closer to you.
There you go.
Okay.
You can come over here. You can really see that the bottom end of the market is what suffered the most, right?
Because those are your rate sensitive folks.
Rate sensitive
people
properties.
Who are shopping on that monthly payment, well, the what they can buy for that same monthly payment changed a lot in the last 6 to 8 months. And as interest rates kind of plateau and we get to our new normal, we'll probably see a little bit of a pickup here in this lower end of the market because people go, okay, this is the new normal. Me waiting for rates to drop, I'll be losing out on, 2 to 3, 4% appreciation versus, $500 less monthly payment, which is a lot.
Well, and you can really see it in a certain spot. So look at the inventory stacking up right here at 800 to a million. 800 to a million is really where it's very rate sensitive because that's a really large monthly payment that, when it was 3%, maybe you could pick it up for 3,000 or 4,000 a month. Well, now it might be 5,000 or 6,000 a month. And that's a dramatic difference, right? And if you don't have a lot to put down, you're definitely not buying in that price range unless you make a lot of money. So that's where we're really starting to see things pile up. But the thing is, the market still has no inventory, right? I mean, this is really, really low. So I think that's one thing to take into consideration. The other is when we get into that month supply of inventory and days on market by price range, I'm telling you, luxury's turning over, right? But then we go and look at this and we're like, wow, there's 7.5 months of inventory, 3+ million now, and they're taking 93 days on average to sell.
But remember, that's always because there's going to be luxury homes that are not priced right or are very unique that you just have to find that right buyer. They're just a unique property. It's, very limited pool of buyers who would want that house, who can afford it. So take those numbers with a grain of salt because, shoot, I just saw one just about 5 million going to contract in a weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time.
It's
I think that's why we talk
it was
buttoned up, ready to go. They look good. I mean, if you're still sitting on shag carpet or, I make fun of that because that's what you see in the lower end of the market. But in the higher end of the market, it could be like 90s finishes, right? The 90s finishes may not get that house sold quickly. So it needs to be priced appropriately. Just because the entire market rose in value doesn't necessarily mean that those homes that are less desirable at 3+ million are doing the same thing. So the other thing I think we want to look at is the clear definition between the $2+ million market and then under 2 million, right? Those places that are more affordable, that are more, like the norm in Boulder County, there's still less than 2 months of inventory. There's not enough homes on the market. But if you wanted to trade up right now from, one of those homes to up into the higher price ranges, it might not be a bad time to do that. The problem is you got cost of money issues, but cost of money is not a forever problem.
Yes.
It's a good time where you might be able to go get a deal. You might be able to get it for less than what you were earlier in the spring.
And it just depends on, and that's the other piece is our market's so affluent that a lot of people are waiting to put those homes on the market after they've made their purchase because they know, hey, right now I can get a deal on the purchase, but for me to sell my house, I don't want to be getting undercut. I can wait 3-4 months. I can handle those 2 payments at the same time. And that's just really how different our market is. Think about
just how many of those bridge loans are out there in this market right now. I mean, there's so many tools, right? I think that's the one thing we need to remember is there's always a lending tool to solve your problem, right? You want to keep both houses? Great. I got a tool for that. You want to move between 2 houses and wait 6 months and remodel first? Great. Somebody's got a tool for that, right? Like there's a lot of really cool stuff out there.
We're seeing more people pull, even bridge loans, home equity lines of credit. We've seen a huge uptick in home equity lines of credit in the last 5 months, as a company and even as a market. And that's that's safety net. Plus that's people going, oh, now I have this capital to go buy a rental or go buy my new primary.
Without
having to sell my home first.
Yeah, I think
So
you have a
we're
lot of
gonna continue
investors
to
starting
see
to
that.
dabble and look in the market where they're like, well, I made $150,000 in equity in the last 2 years. Maybe I should put it to use, right?
Yeah.
I can afford the extra little monthly payment, and then I can go get an asset that'll perform over the long haul. So just another talking point if you're working with clients and you want to figure out a way to help them get another house. I think this is the perfect time to keep your primary as a rental because you got these less than 3% or 3% loans. They're sitting out there and you have a lot of equity and you get that HELOC, pull out some money and go find another one.
Let's be honest. Are we ever really going to get to 3% again? Probably not.
Let's hope not.
Because we had to go through almost a recession. They had to pump trillions of dollars into the economy. The Fed cut rates. We couldn't go out of our houses. That's how we got to that 3%. So when you hear that counter argument,
especially that 2.5% that some people locked at, that's the worst possible scenario.
Yeah. So when you hear people go, "Oh, I'm waiting for rates to get back below 4," coach them. This is your expertise. That was because of a pandemic and world health crisis.
Yeah.
That's not normal. We should never be in those rates again. Why have we been in cheap rates for the last decade plus? Well, because we had a massive recession. So let's keep that in mind of why these rates have been so low. So going forward, yeah, we would all love to have rates in the 4s again, or even 3s. But let's coach our folks to understand, hey, this isn't changing anytime soon. By the time you wait for those rates to, let's say they do drop into the 4s again or the 3s, you might be priced out of that home based on appreciation in Boulder County because we are underbuilt and we will be and we always will be.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the next section. I think this is a good place to address the elephant in the room. How much has the market shifted over the course of these rising interest rates? And then where is there some opportunity and really what are prices looking like? So these are the ones where, if you're working with clients, these might be a couple of really good slides, right? You can see here year to date, we have 23% less homes that sold this year than last year. Well, that's not really that concerning because last year was like the most insane market we'd ever seen, right? And none of us expect to get back there maybe ever again.
But let's also note, when we're looking at the graph in 2022, we can see that drop in right around July. And that was when rates shifted for the first time in a major way.
Went really fast.
And it went really fast. Yeah. And then we can see how the sold data kind of reflected that. And then we really dropped off in, right over there in October and November. Market slowed down. People are putting on the pause button, right? That's what we've been hearing from our clients. That's what we've probably been hearing from your peers. The market slowed down a lot. People are waiting till next year.
Well, and the other part about this is the seasonal change because of the market shift has been really extreme. And the reason for that is buyers don't have to go shop today. And honestly, rates look better tomorrow than they do today. So when you start looking at some of those things, you can see year over year from November last year to November this year, the fall has really slowed down. We're almost 40% lower than we were last November.
But last November, we didn't have a break.
No, it was like a plateaued market, right?
The only reason we had a drop in Q1 of
look at total sales here.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that you can see November, December numbers where they were like really pretty good. And then the only slow months were January and February.
And that was based on inventory.
Confined by inventory.
That was an inventory issue, not a buyer demand issue.
The interest rates are still 3%.
Exactly. So we're going to, now that we're in this market, it's normal to have this slower time of year, right? We've kind of forgotten about that. We've had to tell our staff.
This is the slowest since 2014. And that's because that was the last time there was enough inventory that we had some seasonal changes. This is a very different market than 2014, but at least we are having some of the same seasonality because buyers are making more decisions, right? So let's take a look at it by price point because everyone's going, oh my God, the sky's falling and prices are falling and what's really happening? Well, realistically, average sales prices have been coming down since about April, right?
Yep.
And that's not such a bad thing. The real issue is as price of money goes up, your monthly payment goes up, and then it's harder to afford some of these houses. So you're starting to see some of that equilibrium. Now, how much have we really seen price appreciation? Well, in the trailing 12 months, we've seen 12% increase in average sales prices.
Do you want to explain to people what that means?
I will, yes, because I feel like every time I get questions after this.
What is the TTM change?
Trailing 12 months means in the last 12 months. So from 1 to 12 months ago, over the course of last year, what was the average sales price? That's a good metric on where's the tide at in the market. Now, if we compare that to the previous 12 months, so 13 to 24 months ago, that average, that gives us how much has the market changed in the last year, right? So we can compare the two. The market over the course of the last year has risen by 12%. Now,
that's not equal across the county.
Not equal across the county. And you can see down here at the bottom, You can see all the cities where, somewhere like Boulder might have gone up 8%, somewhere like Lafayette went up 20%, largely due to Marshall fires and this huge increase in demand. But then you have other places that are a little bit slower, right? So things are all over the board, but I like that number. But at the same time, when you're listing a home, you can't be like, well, the houses went up 12%. We should list it 12% higher than the neighbor got a year ago, right?
Yeah.
So we have to look at the year over year number as well. And the year over year number is a good factor of, short term in time, like what are we looking at today? How should I measure this against, maybe before? So when people are saying prices have come down, they've come down, but we're still up 1.5% from this time last year. And they're very different markets.
Yes.
So trailing 12 month, if you're like investors, everything's great. You made 12% this year, right? That's kind of like your investor number. You look at your home seller number and you're like, all right, well, what are we doing, right? Month over month, we chase prices down by another 1%. It's $10,000 less than that average sales price than it was last month. That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But come springtime, we're going to see all those month over month numbers shift back up as supply and demand increase again. So nothing to fear here, right? We're still 1%, 1.5% year over year above where we were last year. But when you look at it as an investment, that's that trailing 12-month number.
Yeah. And that's really nice to look at that average sold price because it kind of shows where the market's going, but it's, the composition is not consistent month over month, year over year of what's being sold. So that's where your expertise is even more valuable than ever. And remind people of that. Yeah, this is what it is for the whole county, but your home is your home and it's unique. And we have to find what buyer is going to be buying this home.
Sure, because I think in places like Superior, that $800,000-$900,000 house actually did decrease in value.
Yes, it did. One, we're just not seeing the activity that we used to see in Superior. The exact reason why is a little unsure. Normally those larger homes that have multiple bedrooms, 4 or 5 bedrooms, they don't sell as much in the fall, into the late fall, winter season.
It's hard to move your kids around the holiday, right?
People are moving their kids. And, me being an empty nester kind of guy, my girlfriend and I are going to go buy a house with 5 bedrooms. What do we do with it?
That's right. It's crazy, right?
A room for each dog. It's just think about what type of inventory is going to move at what type of year.
Exactly. So this one we like to show you guys because it's a really good way to articulate the difference in the market from this year to last year, but it's just total sold numbers. So if you need to shoot a video or something, I like this slide. I think it's really easy for consumers to kind of see that. The last slide that we wanted to talk with you guys about is the percentage sold to list price.
And it's our favorite. Well, it's one of my favorites. And this is where we can see it. Yeah, we're down to 97%. This means there's negotiations happening, right? We're now at 97% of list to sold price. And remember, that is the most recent sold price in the MLS. That doesn't take into effect price cuts. So we can see even with the price cuts
come into effect with all of these seller concessions.
Yeah, there's
there's 2 parts of this that are really important to understand. Seller concessions are on most of the homes we see go under contract right now for buy downs and interest rates and all these other things that they can get.
Deferred maintenance, things of that nature. So that does make a hit. So we're really probably a little bit closer to 97, 96 and a half if we really look at it.
Well, you want a good talking point? This is the lowest number in a fall market since 2012 in Boulder County. It's not the same in Denver. Denver's like 2014. The number's a little bit higher. But in Boulder County, you have to remember, this is a really resilient market, and sellers will sit on their hands and not sell a house if they have to because they can afford it. So these people that are selling right now usually have a reason, right? Job change, marriage, divorce, like new baby, like have to make a move.
They were behind on mortgages with forbearance.
Yeah,
we've seen
all kinds of stuff.
And we've seen a decent uptick in those a little bit more distressed. They're not really hitting the NED. They're not getting foreclosed, but they're pre-foreclosure. They're behind. So we're starting to see a pickup of those, but the foreclosure numbers are really low. Yeah. And that's what's also driving this number down is I have to sell before I have to go into bankruptcy or get foreclosed on. So we're seeing that play in as well. But let's also just remember, 97 is not a bad number.
Not at all. Honestly, and some of the summer numbers in the mountains are 97. So in the best years, the mountains would hit 100%, right? And they're excited. And that's like the traditional norm in the spring. So this is seasonality, and I don't think there's anything to worry about here. The attached and detached markets are really similar. Finally, it's taken all year for that to kind of wash out. Those last 2 huge peaks that we saw in those spring markets are not going to happen again, right? Because that's not a normal market. Look more at that 2019 number where we might rise towards 100% in the peak of the market where, you have bidding wars and stuff going on, and we're back to, paying full price for houses. And then in those fall markets, it's going to feel like this. It's going to feel a little softer. You're going to have to negotiate, dust off those skills because people forgot how to do that since about 2015.
Well, and look at it as well. I mean, even within an entire year, maybe change 2% up or down.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
went on 10-point swings in the last year of how competitive it was to now. So it's just kind of showing, yes, the market shifted, but also just we're going to start seeing a little bit more of a stable market like we did in 2019 and even into that first part of 2020 before things shut down, of where it doesn't fluctuate 5% month over month or 3% month over month, of our sold to list price, because our demand is going to hopefully be a little bit more in line with our inventory. So we're not going to have that hyper market like we did at the start of last year where there's nothing for sale and everyone was buying.
Exactly. All right. Well, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll
Happy
see you
holidays.
All. Exactly. We'll see you in the next year. If you have any questions in the meantime, don't forget Tucker and I are great resources for the data. And don't forget that we would love to work with you in 2023. And if we've worked with you, thank you for everything to making this such a successful year.
We appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.